you want to do this is your event,
Okay.
basically, which you have established. This is your business.
All right. Why don't we just start with just introducing yourself and telling us what you do for a living?
Okay, I am I host two radio shows, a podcast show and a blog talk radio show. I have guests on the podcast show. I have, I say the majority of my guests tend to be to a little toward the Christian perspective, but not all. Matter of fact, I had some fantastic Muslim guests.
Great.
I really did. I mean, I was happy to have them. Like I said, I don't mind other people's views. So what?
Yeah.
So, so yeah,
I,
I had a Muslim novelist, a young girl. She did very well. I had a Muslim scientist. Believe me, his position, Adam, I did not know this about the Muslim religious faith. I didn't know about it that much. But he agreed with me on the issue of creation v evolution. He doesn't believe in evolution. He was a Muslim scientist from Istanbul,
wow.
and he agreed with me on the issue of creation as opposed to evolution. But that, and he goes to these meetings. Obviously, most of the scientific community doesn't agree with him, particularly. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But he goes to meetings and he presents his positions. I mean, as I said, I don't mind people having views that I don't agree with. I have a very nice Muslim philosophy student from Iran who's regularly emailing me. She is presenting the Islamic faith to me, and I present my Christian faith to her. We listen to each other, and we work with each other. So the show is, yes, I wrote these two radio shows. The Blog Talk radio show is on 7 days a week, 6:30 and 11 on Saturday and Sunday.
Wonderful.
And the podcast show is 2 to 3 days a week with guests.
Great.
I also write books. I've written about 10 books, legal and religious books. I am just completed a book on the Psalms, and I'm working on a book on the miracles and sayings of Jesus in the Bible. And I have also written a couple of legal books, select legal topics that I am pointing to. And these books, I have to say, Adam, and I'm not pushing the personal envelope for you. I'm not that kind of person, Everybody reaches the point in life we kind of are a little more realistic about ourselves. We don't think we're quite as great as we thought we were when we were 25. I think so,
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
And yes, these books have sold well nationally and internationally, essays in the Christian worldview. And lately, actually, I wrote a couple of articles on the criminal procedural law and the Syracuse Law Review, and in the Academicus, an Albanian scientific journal on sex discrimination. The article had to do with discriminating. Hopefully, I don't particularly happy about anybody entertaining those views of other people.
Sure.
But there are people. The Supreme Court has correctly ruled that you shouldn't discriminate against people because of their sexual orientation or their homosexual behavior patterns. They should not be discriminated against. So they correctly ruled on that issue. And I spoke about it in this article. Actually, it's been bought by quite a few universities. I'm pleased to say it was bought by the State Department, and the Syracuse Law Review was bought by the United States Supreme Court. So, I mean, of course, I'm happy about that. As I say, I'm not pushing myself on a personal level. You told me to introduce myself, and I'm introducing myself.
That's great. Tell me a little bit.
I also do like radio shows with you and
Yes.
TV.
Yes.
Interviewed about my books and my views and opinions, sometimes politics, and sometimes religion, and sometimes both. And as I say, one time I was in a debate, they were yelling and screaming at me. They were atheists.
Yeah.
They were extremely aggressive on this issue.
Yeah.
But I told them, okay, I mean, that's all right,
Sure. Yeah. Tell me a little bit. I understand that's where you're at now. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
My upbringing, I came from I would say that, Adam, let me put it this way. I believe, I don't know whether you would agree with this or picked up on it. There's been a decline in our educational system.
I would agree with that.
Isn't a lot of people are, shall we say, not so as well informed of history and literature, and philosophy, those kind of things. Maybe they're doing other things like technology or something. Maybe studying other things. It's quite possible. But I think there's been a bit of a decline in that respect. I think a
Sure.
lot of people agree with me. I mean, I think our young people perhaps are not really being helped as they should.
Are
In
you
this
alluding?
respect.
Are you alluding to maybe you had a better education than?
No, the times were different. Adam.
Okay. Yeah.
The times were different then. And what people learned in school was different, I guess. I haven't been in college for a huge amount of years. So I can't say, but I know what they're teaching there. But let me give you an example. I ran into a person that in a one of my colleagues, a lawyer, and she never heard of John Milton. Now, I'm not saying you have to read these people, but she had never heard of him.
Right.
And I ran into another young college student who, and I don't look down on people, Adam. I really don't.
Yeah.
I was somewhat shocked at this revelation as to what's going on in the system. And this person had never heard of Leo Tolstoy. I mean, a young college student. Now, I'm not saying you have to read these people. You may not have time. You may be studying other things. You may be in the sciences or math or something, whatever. But to have never heard of these individuals who are world figures,
Right.
a little bit surprising to me. So
Yeah.
I do have to say that it appears the educational system, in certain respects, is not effective.
I can back you up on that. I stand behind you. I recently, a couple of years ago, I read Moby Dick, and I thought it was going to be
Oh, you read Moby Dick?
yeah, and I thought it was going to be a big.
Tell me, I have never read the entire book.
It's a spanking. It really you really have to sit down and get through Captain Ahab's speeches, and it takes a
Mm-hmm.
while. It takes a while, but I thought it was going to be a
Did you
big
like
fun.
it? I mean, were you benefited by it?
In the long run, I was glad that I read it, but I thought it was going to be a big conversation piece. I was going to be able to talk to a lot of people about it, and I was shocked at how many people go, "Yeah, I never read that." You know?
I never read that. Well, let me ask you this. I want to ask you this, Adam.
Sure.
I have given this matter a bit of reflection because I too tend to read like books like Moby Dick or Tolstoy, or I like them, you know. But I have to say that it seems that the demands made in those books on the readers at that time, for readers of today, they present greater difficulties. In other words, in their time, I don't know what people read or how literate they were, but those books are extremely demanding and complex as opposed to modern work.
I concur. Yeah, there's a lot of
So what's going on? In
what's
their
going.
time were people more literate, better educated, a smaller reading public.
Yeah, that was
What do
in.
you think? I mean,
Well, I mean that was entertainment. People would trade books. They would get really excited.
it was entertainment.
So I think that maybe there were stronger readers. Maybe it was the vernacular at the time. The Bible, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
is pretty thick and chewy.
It
If you
is.
really,
But do
um,
you believe? I have this question because I want to tap your mind on this.
sure, sure.
Because you just finished Moby Dick. Do you believe people in the past that um, they were geared to more complex thinking?
Um, sure. Yeah, I don't think that that's too far fetched. There was, I mean, poetry was a lot more prevalent,
It
and
was very much so.
um, like I was saying before, the speeches in that book, the captain
Oh
goes on
yeah.
these rants that are like chapters long. So, sure, yeah, I think that maybe there was a little more complex thinking as opposed to, picking up a cell phone and getting
Or
an answer
or
right
do
there.
our society people learn today, or are they function? And you tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, because I'm always willing to listen. People are focused in our age on images, pictures, essentially. And what I think the problem is, and hopefully that this will change, I sincerely hope it will change, is the attention deficit span is very short. In other words, it's not that people can't read or don't know how to read. They can't focus enough to do it.
Sure, if I can support that, I think it's the reason why the chapstick ends up with the AA batteries in the junk drawer, because they're the same shape. You know, it's a visual thing. It makes no sense to have chapstick and batteries together.
Right.
But yet we find the chapstick next to the AA batteries. I do think that we associate shapes, images, more so now than ever before. I can back you up on that.
But is that going to really help a person in their thinking capacity to look at pictures?
Not at all. No. Not at all.
I have to take up a quick phone call. Hello? It's an advertisement. Okay. So, but I do want to ask you, do you believe that the reading public, say at least in the 19th century, was more elite?
Certainly. Yeah, I think without a question. Yeah.
Fewer people.
Certainly.
First of all, not that a lot of people were illiterate at that time, weren't they?
Very true. Also, yeah, a point that I had not yet taken into consideration, but I do know for a fact that there were a lot of people that couldn't read.
But on the other hand, I have, for example, a book of the Lincoln Douglas debate speeches. I dipped into it, Adam, and these people were not in what we would define as college graduates. Maybe they went to a couple of years, 3 or 4 years of elementary school. Maybe.
Sure.
I think Lincoln, I don't think he didn't go into college. He had 3 or 4 years of elementary school. But on the other hand, these debates, as presented, were extremely literate presentations. So the only thing I can put together is that at that time, because of the fewer distractions, maybe they picked up the ability to think and read.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, quick on your feet.
They weren't illiterate. I can tell you that. Sure. Even though they went to 4th grade, they were by no means illiterate.
I agree.
You think people at that time simply were able? It was a literate society in general.
I would say so. Yeah, sure. I don't think that that's too far-fetched. No.
But people, they did not go to college. I don't think there were any colleges.
Well, I mean, there's the age-long debate if you have street smarts or book smarts. I'm doing air quotes here. I do think that you don't have to necessarily. Going to school doesn't make you an intelligent person.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
You're right. And I do think that there are people with grit and people that are sharp, to use, I don't know, just to kind of use simplistic terms. And maybe there was a little bit more of that. You did have to fend for yourself. You couldn't rely on this person or your cell phone or Google.
That's right.
You had to sort of figure it out. You had to thumb through an encyclopedia, or if that was available at that time.
But they did, because print, I think, let me see if I'm right. You tell me if I'm wrong. Of course, the only medium of communication besides talking was print. No television, no radio, no cell phones, no computers, just print.
Right.
So that made a society, if you wanted to function effectively on any level, you had to be able to read and write.
That's right. I've got this old book of illustrations of people that had traveled the world, and it's pen drawings of bugs and animals that they had seen on their travels. And it's pretty impressive how well of an artist people, or at least this person was. But it was just, and you can tell some of them are a little off. Like there's an elephant with kind of like a humanoid face. Maybe they didn't see him very long, but it's pretty interesting to see this was imagery. Like you had to do a quick
Yeah.
sketch and capture it right then and there. And that's how you're gonna convey. I saw
Uh-huh.
an elephant when I was in Africa, and
Uh-huh.
this is what it looked like. And you
Uh-huh.
could only hold up a sketch and say, here
Yeah,
it is.
I agree with you that I don't believe that intellectual ability is based on what you do in school, or I guess if they require school, colleges become a requirement to get most jobs. But the issue is, uh, does it make is a person who goes to college therefore better qualified intellectually or more?
I
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think you can certainly pick up knowledge and pick up skills if you're
Mm.
taught them, but I don't necessarily think that makes a um, well-educated person per se.
Or an
Or
effective person, not even in education, but in generally in his ability to forge their way through life. For example, I know of two writers because I read a lot, and when I do that because I enjoy it, it's
yes,
entertainment for me.
yes,
Charles Dickens and Joseph Conrad, two leading English writers, never went to school. Now, I want to know why these geniuses were able to do what they did without any education at all.
hey, it's who knows? Maybe it's grit. Maybe it's some of the stuff that we were talking about before.
But it leads me to the conclusion that educate that it is in the person and their innate ability that makes them what they are and what they can do in the world, not necessarily going to school.
Right? Yeah, I concur. I concur. Um, Andrew, do you mind if I ask you a few more questions about yourself?
Sure, I can answer them.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
When did you get interested in your profession?
My father was a lawyer, and he sort of guided me into law, although I have a theological degree, an MDiv from Princeton Seminary, and my family was at least my mother, well, my father too, his father was a pastor. My mother was very focused on church activity and religious beliefs, so that led me to that. And but also my father was a lawyer and sort of guided me to that choice, and my mother guided me to religious belief. Well, my father too, because his father was a pastor. But that is really what shaped my life. And also, my mother was an English teacher.
Was that right?
Yeah, she was an English teacher, and there were a lot of books in the house, a lot of books.
That makes
She was
sense.
always reading, and that affected me because I believe I was helped by that. You know, to get into the. I think that books are very important. Despite Adam, despite the focus today, which is moved away from books, I think a child who is not exposed to books and reading, I don't think they'll do very well.
I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Was there ever a time in your life where you felt like you needed guidance or advice?
I always look for advice and guidance. I'm looking it from you. I mean, of course. I mean, I got it from my parents, and sure, my decisions, career decisions, and certainly my family was very, very focused on books and literature, very much so, and education. And I do say this that even though people may differ from me on this, and believe me, you can do any kind of work you want. There are people who do baseball players that make 20 million a year. I
Certainly.
mean, so they can't read or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're doing very well.
Yeah. That's right.
Or a blues musician may not be able to read, but he's doing very well.
That's
So there's
right.
a lot of things people do.
That's right.
That doesn't involve books or literature or that kind of or education really.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I do think books help.
what was the keel of the ship that sort of aligned you into your biblical studies?
That was my mother and her religious beliefs, I think, and my sister too. My sister teaches theology in Boston College,
Um,
BC. Are you from Boston, or where are you from?
I'm from Dallas, Texas originally.
Oh yeah.
I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now. So
Now Dallas is the the boom town for um, uh, Baptist churches.
Sure. Yeah. If
Big
you would,
ticket item.
I'm happy to share with you a little bit of my upbringing. I
Oh,
was
go
raised.
ahead. I want to know about you.
Sure. I was raised Southern Baptist. My father was a deacon of the church. He would sometimes even lead a sermon. We would have almost a nightly Bible study.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, yeah. I was led to believe that if I questioned the teachings of the Bible, I was a sinner, quote unquote. So I
Well,
find
that I
myself.
wouldn't quite agree with.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. So I find myself mostly agnostic
Uh-huh.
due to unanswered questions or unexplainable phenomenons,
Mm,
contradictions,
mm.
unbelievable facts or science. And whenever I would attempt to ask for an explanation, I'm often led to a George Michael song. You gotta have
Mm,
faith, you know.
right.
So
Let me ask you this:
yes,
there's a big Baptist university in Dallas.
yes.
I don't know remember the name of it.
Was it SMU?
Uh, what?
Was it SMU? Southern Methodist
I
University?
don't remember. I mean, but people have described to me because I've sort of moved with to a certain extent with those groups of people. But it was as I say, Dallas and Texas. Maybe it's changing now, but they were bastions of Baptist fundamentalism.
Oh no, that's still prevalent. I think that
It
that
is?
yes, I went to a Baptist church that was
Uh,
right downtown Dallas, and we moved on the outskirts of town, and we
uh,
continued our Southern Baptist uh,
mm.
teachings. So that's in a nutshell how I was raised.
Are
Um,
you now a more either an atheist or a Gnostic or a little of both?
I would have to say a little of both. I think that you are. I think if you consider yourself a full-blown atheist, you're kind of lying to yourself in a sense.
Mm.
You're kind of putting yourself out there as I know it all. So
Yeah,
don't come at me because I already know
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Where that's never my
I
stance.
agree with you on that. Yeah,
I feel like you can always learn something.
you can. You
And
can.
I don't believe that anybody has psychic powers over me or has the ability to communicate um, on a higher plane than I do, despite what some other religions may think
Right.
or
Let
say.
me ask you this, Adam.
Yes, sir.
When you left the Baptist fold and moved into other forms of thinking, whether agnostic or atheist or an atheist, apparently, you had questions, I guess that's the way to put it. Did your family get upset about it?
Um, they seem to be fairly quiet about it. So if they're upset, they haven't expressed that with me. I think they maybe just have their fingers crossed that the lost lamb may find its way back.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't, to answer that honestly, I'm not certain of whether they are displeased or worried, concerned.
Have you discussed it with them? Your
I have
decision to leave religion and move into other forms of thinking. Have you talked about it with
I have not sat down and had a conversation with them, to be
them?
completely
Uh-huh.
honest. Um, my mother listens to the show, so she's aware of my agnostic beliefs, but we haven't had a sit down, full blown conversation about it.
I'm just curious. I mean,
Yeah,
well,
that's
that's good. It means that they're sort of liberal. They don't force themselves on you
yes,
on these
and
issues.
you know, I'm creeping up on 40 years old here, so
Mm,
I think maybe
mm.
what are we going to tell this guy now? Possibly.
Well, yeah. Are they still very traditional in that respect?
Not necessarily. I think my mother and father go to church occasionally, but that's also something that I don't check in with and say, hey, did you reading the Bible? You
Yeah,
doing, so I
yeah,
I too have not checked in and
I'm
asked.
just curious, you know.
That's all right.
Sometimes there are. I remember a guy I interviewed on my podcast show. He was Jewish and he became a Christian and Jews for Jesus. I did project the question to him about family flock.
Yes.
He didn't have any problems either.
Yeah, I'm an open book. I don't mind
Yeah.
if you want to ask me anything at all.
Well, this fellow had no. I was curious about his family opposition. I mean, which might be the case in certain instances from a family which was very set in their theological or religious views, very, very important to them. But he didn't have a problem with his family on that issue.
Yeah.
He really didn't.
Do you have any qualms or hangups with the Bible, seeing as how it was written 3,400 years ago?
Well, I can answer that question. First of all, I'm not criticizing your reasoning, so I hope you won't take offense at what I
No,
say.
not at all. Please.
Because it's old doesn't make it less true or valid than something new.
I can agree with that.
Though I weigh a book, it could be Dickens, or as I read these older books, I weigh a book not based on its age or newness or oldness, but on what I feel it's worth, as I can make a judgment. And yes, I believe the Bible has many, 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 many valid and extremely profound things to say. I don't think because it's old it makes it less true than something new.
What would you say to a scientist that says that the Earth is 4.5 million years old, as opposed to
I
the
didn't say
Bible?
that. I don't know how old the Earth is, but I accept the creation story in the Bible. Of course, it was those days there was no sun, and so that particular narrative, we can't understand the concept of time at that point.
Okay.
As stated in that creation story, because time didn't exist.
So do you think
God
it
is
kind of,
outside of time.
right? So do you think it could be a little foggy, seeing as how the Bible was written 2,000 years before
Well,
Christ?
I told you, I don't think because it's whether it was written 2,000, 10,000, or 100,000 years ago, I'm not prepared to make a judgment in that respect. I read it. I think it's very profound. I believe there's essential truth in it. And that's why I'd read it. I
Okay,
believe it.
fair enough.
And it has nothing to do with the age of the thing any more than I make a judgment on a person who's old at 85 that they're stupid or senile as opposed to a person at 20. That would be a similar judgment. And I'm not prepared to make that judgment. It's about, particularly about, I like older literature. I like those things. And I weigh them and read them. So I don't think, and I think our modern world today is very focused. I'm not criticizing you, Adam. I'm not
I'm not
criticizing.
taking it that way. No, not at all.
But the world today is very, very focused on newness, fashionability, fads, and something coming down the pike recently. Many of our young people want to buy a new car. They
right.
want to get a new pair of shoes.
Yeah,
They want to get new clothes. They want everything new. And I don't weigh things in that respect.
I
I
agree with you
believe
there.
it's incorrect.
I agree with you there.
Any more than I talk to homeless people occasionally. And that's fine. I don't have an issue with someone who doesn't look too good. So what? They may
Right.
have some points to make to me
Yeah, like I
that
said
can be
before,
conveyed.
I feel like we could all learn from each other.
We can learn from each other because a person's homeless or messy. Many people in our modern society, Adam, I believe it's true, make a judgment on how you look.
Sure, I think
And
it's a huge.
looks and clothes
Hmm.
and money, those are the yardsticks that the society adopts today. I don't agree with it, but that's it.
I I agree with you that that's not a very good way to measure a person.
No, it isn't. You don't
Either.
know that person. Just
Right.
because he may not be well dressed, or I would never make a judgment on someone like that. I say this. Tell me if I'm wrong or right. I'm not making a sexist comment. I have a lot of women friends, and I have no issue with sex or sexuality or whatever. But I say this: many women will measure a guy as a potential mate or boyfriend, how they're dressed, how much money they have, and how they look.
Sure. Yeah. I think that as humans,
Don't they do that?
of course, certainly in LA,
So what do you think of that? Do you think that our lady friends are a little bit confused?
I think two things about that. I think as humans, we, as a survival instinct, will make a prejudgment no matter what. Does this person look dangerous? Does this
Well,
person?
let me put it this way. A woman will be more attracted to a guy who wears a nice suit than to a guy in a messy shirt.
I would agree with that. Yes.
You think that's right?
I do think that's right, and it's the reason why I wear nice shirts or a clean shirt for that
Why
matter.
is it? But you believe that form of judgment is true?
No,
I
not
think
at all. I think you can be very you don't have to be very well off to acquire a suit. You can go to a secondhand store and you can
But
find
they see it as money, don't they?
right.
When a woman
Yeah,
sees that suit as money and power.
absolutely. So that can give you the facade that this person
It
is
is the
wealthy.
facade.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
So I agree with you in that manner that it's not a good thing to judge someone on as
I
far
don't think
as
so.
appearance.
Well,
Um,
for example, a garbage man may be very, very poorly dressed.
correct.
Sanitation man. I have sanitation men where I live in Queens, and they are not tremendously well dressed. Their shirts are kind of disheveled,
Hmm.
and I don't hold it against them,
Right.
you know. But a woman would not like that.
Yeah, and to strengthen your point, just to echo the poor quality of judging just based on sight. A good friend of mine, his brother has a waste management company, which is a garbage man, and he's very well off. He's,
You
so
believe to be associated with a garbage man is a downer for a woman.
I would assume, generally speaking, yes. Everybody's got their own opinions, and maybe there are women out there that are a little more mindful than others, and men for that regard as well, that may see past that. And I think that as society, we could all use a little bit of breaking down your ego. Your ego is not your amigo is a nice little
Mm.
thing I like to say. But I think if you can sort of see past the disheveled shirt or whatever the unsightly quality might be and into that person a little more, I think we would all be a little more
Well,
better off.
men do the same thing in their attractions,
For certain.
looks, clothes, whatever, and they can, those I think looks can be very misleading.
I concur. I concur.
You don't know that person.
That's right.
They may be awful.
Yeah. Is this a Christian belief that you have, or
I
is it?
would say so. Yes, Jesus did, as many of his followers were poor people, one of a better word, sinners, and he died the death of a criminal. And he said the poor were blessed. He made many statements in this respect. So yes, it is a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
But other people share that perspective, non-Christians. I
I
would assume so. Any
Yeah,
kind of thinking person may share that perspective.
most definitely. What do you think about the idea that Jesus is not an original story? That the Egyptians in the Book of Dead, 1280 BC,
Mm-hmm,
describe Horus, the son of God,
mm-hmm,
born of a virgin mother, baptized in a
mm-hmm,
river,
mm-hmm,
tempted while alone in the desert, healed the sick, cured the blind,
mm-hmm,
cast out demons, walked on
mm-hmm,
water, resurrected
mm-hmm,
from the dead, had
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
12 disciples,
Right.
and was crucified and rose 3 days later. In India,
Uh-huh.
Krishna, 1000 BC, was a carpenter, born of a virgin mother, baptized in a river. It goes on to the Persian god
Mm-hmm,
Mithra, 600 BC,
mm-hmm.
born December 5th, performed miracles, resurrected on the third day, known as the Lamb, the way, the truth, and the light. Is
Mm-hmm.
there, do you think that,
Uh-huh.
Do you believe that the story of Jesus is a reinterpretation of any of these?
I don't know about those. I can't comment. I really haven't. I don't have that knowledge about those stories.
That's fair.
But I believe that for me, Jesus makes a claim, his essential claim, which I think is the stepping point of people who don't like his claim, his exclusive claim to be God. As a matter of fact, he had trouble with the religious hierarchy at that time on that issue. I can't say, I can't comment on it because I never heard, I have not, don't have that information. I will look into it, be
I,
happy to look into it
I think that's a
as
fair.
much as you've told me.
Yeah,
But I'm not prepared to say that I believe that Jesus is God. And
I
I'm not about to change that position.
I understand, and I think that you're entitled to that, and I respect that answer over. Whoa, where'd you hear that? As
No,
opposed to,
I don't, I'm not aware of that information.
oh, I appreciate.
Glad you told me about it. But that's all I can say.
I understand. I completely understand and support that. What about? Do you believe in the concept of talking snake, or do you think that was more of like a metaphor?
I think it was an allegory.
Yeah.
I think the story, the Garden of Eden narrative, and I think it's true, because I think it's factually true, because anybody who looks at humanity with 6 genocides in the last 100 years, Communist China, Pol Pot, Holocaust, Armenian genocide, Rwanda, whatever you may name, uh, anybody who doesn't think this world is a fallen world and that there is a great deal of evil in it is now has their eyes shut. That's my opinion. So yes, I believe that story is true. I think that what we are told in that story is very significant. That it was the pride of our first parents. They were told they could be like gods by Satan in the guise of that snake. I don't know if the snake is the issue. It's an allegory, but I believe it's a very profound allegory that we live in a very mixed up, fallen world. And that story attempts to explain the presence of evil in the world. And anybody who doesn't think, there are people who disagree with me. Yeah, in the modern world, many people don't like to talk about evil and sin. But for me, when I look at 6 genocides in the past 100 years, when I look at what goes on in the world, I am not unconvinced of the truth of that story, that humanity has a big problem.
Is this based on your faith?
It's based on the facts.
Based on the facts.
Well, you tell me when there's been 6 or 7 genocides in the past 100 years, you tell me what's going on. Why do people do this?
This goes back
They're
to
nice people. Why do people divorce? Why do people beat other people? This goes on every day of the week, everywhere, in every place. That's the world, and you know it, Adam.
I
It
agree.
is the world.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think?
And so that story, to me, attempts to convey to us why this happened and what is going on in the world. Yes, I think it's true.
Okay, that's fair enough. I think that I think that you're entitled to that opinion, and I do also agree with you that there is evil in the world. A lot, absolutely,
Huge amount.
Corruption.
Every marriage involves people. 50% of marriages end in divorce because two people are one person is so egotistical and self-driven that they can't make an adjustment to the other person. I guess that's one explanation.
I think that's a fine explanation. Yeah, if you're not willing to compromise.
Or they didn't know that person, or when they got to know them better, that person changed in the course of years in the marriage, and then a new person emerged that they may not like too much.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of divorces that I know.
It is, yeah. It is. As I say, I mean, and there's not only are there divorces, Adam, I know people are not going to like my saying this, they're going to get angry, But we live in a society of where people sort of, number one, it's a society which is focused on people doing what they want. And in doing what they want, they may engage in excessive sexual freedom, which is they can do it. People can have sex, nothing illegal about it. But it leads to a lot of problems. It leads to people using each other. It leads to people going from person to person without real love involved. I don't think it's good. That's our present society. It is.
What's your stance on conversion therapy for somebody that may prefer the same sex? Do you have any?
I wouldn't. For me, homosexuality. I think it's for me. First of all, it's not against the law. That's the first thing. It at one time sodomy or same-sex activity was against the law, maybe until the 20s or 30s or something like that.
And against the Bible as well. It was
Well, I think it was against the law. It may have been affected by that thinking, but it was against the law.
I
Oscar Wilde in 1890, a very great writer, playwright, and poet, went to jail for a sodomy conviction in his time. So but that has since been eliminated, perhaps correctly. And there is no illegal action involved in sodomy or same-sex activities. It's allowed. It's allowed. So that's the law, and I obey it.
how does it does it provoke or change your religious views?
No, because my religious views are confined to my religious activity. I don't have anything against gay people.
Fair enough.
As I say, it's not against the law. They're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
One time, 50 years ago it was, but that has changed, correctly changed. So I don't think we should have the right to go into people's bedrooms and arrest them. No. But I think that for me, homosexuality, in terms of my more conservative religious views, I don't agree with it. I'm not in agreement with that activity, but I don't. On the other hand, since it's not against the law and it's something people are allowed to do, I have no issue with it. Why would I have an issue with it?
I don't
Any
know.
more than people want to eat a lot of ice cream or whatever they want to do, or have more than one girlfriend. It's not against the law.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I have no issue with it.
I have no issue with it either. What book or show would you recommend to today's modern society, to somebody that might want to broaden their religion or religious horizons per se?
I love C.S. Lewis, Christian author.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very funny. He wrote a wonderful book called Mere Christianity. I recommend that book, as well as The Great Divorce and other religious books that he wrote. C.S. Lewis is a fine thinker. I also would recommend, these are older books, maybe, that people don't know about anymore, because like I said, our society, the educational system, is focused on the moment.
Certainly, yeah.
And it's focused on recent books. I'm not sure that recent books have the answer for me. As I say, I don't make a judgment on old or new. I look at the item, make a judgment on it. I got to read it.
Yeah.
I think that St. Augustine would be helpful, his Confessions. I think John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress would be helpful. I think T.S. Eliot, who was a Christian and a poet and a Nobel Prize winner, would be helpful. All of these people would be helpful in the kind of thinking I engage in. But on the other hand, there's Bertrand Russell, was a rationalist and an atheist. And I read his stuff too.
That's beautiful. Good. I think those are helpful authors and books to check out. Thank you for that.
It's okay, my pleasure.
Let's see. I think you pretty well. To go backwards a little bit, we were talking a little bit about the evil in the world, and if I can ask a question from 8-year-old Adam's perspective, why would God allow such evil, corruption, destruction, so on and so forth?
Because God, he wants for Christianity, and that's our position, he wants relationships with people. He wants voluntary relationships with people. He allows us That's my belief. You don't have to agree with it, or nobody has to agree with it. It's fine. Like I said, I have no issue. I read Bertrand Russell. He's an atheist. He's a very good writer. I mean, so like I said, yes, he allows evil because he wants people. He doesn't want robots. He doesn't want people who don't have a relationship with you. Look, can you have a relationship if you want to love somebody? Can you love that person being forced to love them? No, that won't be a relationship. Or you can't have a person if someone rapes a woman, does that woman love him? No. God wants a voluntary, loving, that's my opinion, wants a voluntary, loving relation, and he will allow people to do that. Because if they force them otherwise, look, Adam, you know this better than I do, force is no relationship. You can't force people into love.
I agree.
It's got to come from the person. It's got to come from their heart. And that's what God wants, I think, what God and Jesus wants from people. He wants a voluntary friendship and relationship based on love. And he allows evil because he doesn't want to force people, doesn't want to force the issue to have a relationship with them. That's my explanation.
Do you believe that God is a loving entity?
Obviously, since he sent his son to die for people on the cross, I can't think of any greater love exhibited than that.
Do you believe that he is a spiteful entity also?
No. I believe the message of Christ in the New Testament is that he died and was tortured for humanity. That is the extent of his love for us. Yes, that's what I believe. I don't think he's spiteful. I think he loves people. He wants them to be with him. He wants them to have a loving relationship with him. And the people that followed him were not the people of wealth, were not the people of power, but were the poor and disadvantaged people. Those he said specifically, his criticism of Jesus, one of the criticisms was, who is this man of the religious hierarchy in Palestine? Who is this? They couldn't understand it. Who is this man that eats with publicans and sinners? They couldn't understand why a educated person would spend time with publicans, which are tax collectors and sinners. They said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Meaning that was a contemptuous statement, and anything good come out of this backwater. That's the issue for me. That's Jesus. That's what he says. That's what he wants us to be. He says the poor are blessed. He says the poor in spirit are blessed, meaning the humble. And he chose as his disciples not people of education, not people of wealth, not people of power, but a couple of fishermen. And maybe if he was in the world today, he'd be choosing a couple of truck drivers and homeless men to be his followers. Maybe.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I don't think that's too far-fetched. Would you join a social club that promoted bigotry, homophobia, misogyny?
I do not believe in any kind of racism. It's terrible. As a Christian, I would never endorse racism or bigotry or anything against any group. Jesus commands us to love one another. He says, love your neighbor. He not only says, love your neighbor, he says, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. No, it's completely antithetical to my religious beliefs and position that I would join hands with any people who had those views.
Do you believe that I think you're pretty clear on that you don't believe that the Bible teaches any of that. It seems like in your statement that you just issued that you don't believe that the Bible teaches any of that.
No, it doesn't.
Bigotry, homophobia.
Christianity is if you look at the world, people become Christians of all races and nations and nationalities. It is not a racial or bigoted system. It isn't.
I can certainly get behind that. I support equal human rights, and I don't think that anybody should be excluded or treated differently.
I don't think so. No. As I say, the issue, as a Christian, why would I exclude anybody? Jesus cast down his life for all humanity. Am I going to exclude anybody? No, he didn't exclude anybody. Nobody.
Andrew,
fishermen.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
sinners. The he was accused of associating with lower class people, and they couldn't accept it, and they disliked it. His contemporaries.
Andrew, I want to ask you one final question, and then since you were so kind to do this show and answered all of my questions so honestly, I want to give you the last word. So if there's any parting words, I'm going to give the final mic to you. But do you believe that faith is making a virtue out of not thinking or believing in something with no?
No, I don't think so, because faith attempts an explanation for events and 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 activities that really, when we that materialistic modern thinking is unable or does not deal with, whether that we're all going to die. It doesn't seek to explain that. Whether we doesn't exceed it, without faith, we have no explanation for evil and sin, or wickedness, or the Holocaust that I've just described. The modern world provides no explanation for these events and activities. That's what faith does, is an attempt to move forward from materialism and secularism and try to find an explanation for death, for evil, and for suffering, and for pain.
Beautiful. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to?
No, I was very happy to talk to you. I think you're an intelligent person, and you don't hold against me my views. And as I said, I read many atheists, quite a few.
Great.
I mean, agnostics. I have no reason to. As I said, Bertrand Russell is a fantastic writer.
Yeah.
He was a philosopher. He hated Christianity. I read his book called Unpopular Essays. He said he hated it. And he said it's an idea that's destroyed the world. So what? Maybe it was misused. Okay. Anyway, I'm always interested in people who want to enter into a dialogue with me.
Same here. Same here. I really had a pleasure, and I respect you.
Thanks. I respect you. As I say, my last word is, please, ladies and gentlemen, and Adam, feel free to dialogue with me on any subject you want.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to reach back out if you're willing to do this show
sure.
again. I would.
As I say, dialogue is the best word. I like that word.
Yeah, same here.
I like dialoguing because it means that I'm listening, I'm exchanging views with respect.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Andrew, thank you so much for doing the show. That's it for us. Play us out. Shity ukulele.